The 2023 NFL trade deadline is just over a week today, and on today's edition of NFL Daily, I'm going to be breaking down my top 25 NFL trade candidates here as we approach the deadline. So before we get into today's video, before we get into today's action, do me a favor, click that subscribe button right now and join the over 300,000 people already subscribed here at Chat Sports and join our family. We're going to be having wall-to-wall coverage covering the 2023 NFL trade deadline. We're even going live on deadline day, so do me a favor, click that subscribe button right now and join us for NFL trade deadline coverage. All right, now let's talk a little bit about the trade deadline right here, where, of course, October 31st, Halloween, is going to be the trade deadline this year for the NFL. And there's definitely a lot of big names that are currently being speculated could be heading to other locations. So let's go position by position here. This is in no particular order. These are just the top 25 guys that I see as the best available players on the trade market. Let's start with the quarterback position. Really, the only quarterback that I see has a chance of getting dealt before the deadline is Ryan Tannehill of the Tennessee Titans. Right now, the Titans do have Malik Willis and Will Levis both on their roster. The Titans season, it's definitely not going in the right direction right now. And then, of course, Ryan Tannehill is dealing with an injury right now, a high ankle sprain that he suffered in Week 6. He's going to be a free agent in 2024, so if the Titans feel like he's not the future and another team wants to grab him via trade, Titans might feel like they want to get some trade or some draft capital for this guy. But the big hurdle, I think, for trading Ryan Tannehill is going to be his base salary, which is currently sitting at $27 million. Now, of course, because it's in the middle of the season, the salary is going to be at a prorated rate, so it's going to be less than 27, but it's just going to depend on when he gets traded here. And it's definitely going to be interesting to see. I really don't think Ryan Tannehill is going to be traded by the deadline, though. I think he's got the best chance of being traded, but trading quarterbacks midseason is definitely difficult. They have to go and learn a whole new offense, a whole new playbook, all this different stuff, and teams just usually don't trade for a starting quarterback in the middle of the season for a reason. It's extremely difficult, and because of that really big base salary that Ryan Tannehill has, it's going to be less likely. But if there's going to be two teams that end up trading for a quarterback before the deadline, it's going to be either the Atlanta Falcons or the New York Jets, in my opinion. Atlanta might be the number one team on my list there because Desmond Ridder, let's face it, he's not it. I don't think they believe in Taylor Heineke for the future. It's a pretty similar offense. Of course, Arthur Smith used to be in Tennessee. There's that connection there. So if he feels like Ryan Tannehill could be that guy to kind of take this Falcons team to the next level, maybe they decide to do it. Also, New York is an obvious one. Aaron Rodgers dealing with that Achilles injury. But it seems like they're going to be rolling with Zach Wilson. So if a Ryan Tannehill trade happens, I think it's going to be to the Atlanta Falcons. Now let's talk about the running backs here. I got two on my list. Of course, let's start with Derrick Henry. Of course, has played with the Tennessee Titans. King Henry, very good running back still. He's 29 years old, though, so he's definitely probably got less tread on the tires than somebody like a Josh Jacobs. Of course, the Raiders' run game is simply just non-existent right now. Josh Jacobs is not particularly playing well to this point in the season, but he is younger. He's only 25 years old, and he led the league in rushing just last year, so he's obviously very talented. You take a look at the stat comparison here between Derrick Henry and Josh Jacobs, and, you definitely see Derrick Henry has the better numbers so far this season. It's not even close. 4.3 yards per carry compared to 2.9. The rush yards over expectation. I mean, Josh Jacobs is one of the lowest in the league in that category with negative 74. But then Derrick Henry at 29 years old, still getting 66 more yards than he's expected to get. Of course, that offensive line in Tennessee is one of the worst in football right now. But overall, you got this touchdowns right here, 3-2, and then the success rate, obviously a little bit higher for Derrick, but it's not terrible for Josh Jacobs at this point. So let me know who you guys think is the more valuable trade piece. Is it Derrick Henry, more productive but older running back, type DH? Or do you think it's the younger running back here with Josh Jacobs, not as productive, but only 25 years old, type JJ, if you think him? This is also going to be the pinned comment on today's show. So YouTube's going to throw you an ad break here in just a couple of seconds. When that happens, take advantage of that time by answering today's pinned question. Now let's go over the wide receivers here, starting with Jerry Jeudy. Of course, Denver is in full-scale fire sale mode here. Jerry is a very good wide receiver, good route runner. Maybe not the best hands in the world, not the best 50-50 guy, but overall pretty decent wide receiver. I'd expect even a team like Carolina, big-time need at wide receiver, could be an option for Jeudy. Then Courtland Sutton, another wide receiver from Denver, bigger body, more of a true X receiver if a team is in need of somebody on the perimeter, maybe like a Kansas City Chiefs potentially that could use a big-bodied receiver on the outside. He could be somebody that's an option, although it'd be tough to trade in the division. Darnell Mooney from Chicago is another big option. I think he's a very talented player. He's definitely a number 2 guy, though. He's not a true number 1. Another guy that maybe Kansas City would be interested in. Adam Thielen, Carolina Panthers. I mean, Adam is somebody that's getting older. He's trying to win a ring. You're not going to be doing that in Carolina anytime soon, so it wouldn't shock me to see Carolina try to get something for Thielen while he's still valuable. He's actually doing a pretty nice job. Fantasy owners that have Thielen on their teams know that he's been very productive to start this season. He's been Bryce Young's number 1 target this year. So Carolina might try to get some pretty decent draft capital in a trade for Thielen. And then Hunter Renfrow, if you're looking for a guy, pure slot receiver, then Hunter Renfrow is probably going to be your guy, in my opinion. Very good route runner, maybe not the most athletic guy, maybe not the most shifty guy, but he's definitely a good slot receiver. He gets open a lot. The Raiders really like Jacoby Myers in the slot, so the Raiders will definitely be looking to move Renfrow before the deadline. So coming up here, I got more NFL trade rumors to break down with you guys here. But first, let's have a word from our sponsor at Prize Picks. If you're looking to spice up your game days this NFL season, then get started with Prize Picks today. Prize Picks is a skill-based, real money daily fantasy sports game. You might be asking yourself, how does it work? Here's how. You pick 2 to 6 players, and if they'll go for more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 25 times your money on any entry. So let's take a look at my entry for tonight's Monday Night Football matchup between the Minnesota Vikings and the San Francisco 49ers. I'm going to take the less on Kirk Cousins passing yards with Justin Jefferson out of the lineup. I'm going to take the more on Brock Purdy. I think he's going to do pretty darn good tonight. And then George Kittle's on my fantasy team, so I'm going to give him the more there on receiving yards. Hopefully he can have a good night tonight. You can check it out now at prizepicks.com/CLNS and use our code CLNS for a deposit match up to $100 today. At Prize Picks, you aren't competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks. With Prize Picks, it takes less than 60 seconds to make your picks. So get started right away, right now. Get your picks in before Monday Night Football tonight. Go to prizepicks.com/CLNS and use our code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code CLNS at prizepicks.com/CLNS for a deposit match up to $100 today. Now we're shifting to the tight ends here. I got 2 on my list today. Kyle Pitts from the Atlanta Falcons, of course, former top 5 pick. Hasn't lived up to that hype to this point in his career. The Falcons maybe aren't using him in the exact right ways. He hasn't had the best quarterback play. There's a team out there that really wants an athletic receiving type weapon at the tight end position. He could be somebody that's worth maybe a 4th-round pick at this point. And then also Zach Ertz from the Arizona Cardinals. In my opinion, Ertz is still a very valuable receiving type tight end, especially in the red zone. He's a great red zone threat. And, he's a very, very valuable piece to the Cardinals offense right now. But listen, Zach Ertz is getting older. He wants to win a ring, and the Cardinals aren't going to win one anytime soon. And he's got a pretty decently sized contract right now that I don't think the Cardinals want to hold on to. So if there's a team out there that's willing to give up a 6th-round pick maybe for Zach Ertz, I think the Cardinals would probably bite on that. And I think a team like, especially the Washington Commanders, that could really use a nice tight end in Eric Bieniemy's offense, I think either one of these guys could be an option for Washington. Now let's move to the offensive line. And listen, it's not easy to find trade candidates on the offensive line, but there are a couple here that I think are possible. Garrett Bowles from the Broncos. I mean, yes, the Broncos will probably try to ship him out, but man, the base salary is really big on Garrett Bowles' contract right now. Not sure that there's many people or many teams out there that would bite on that. I think the more likely option to get traded by the deadline is actually Trent Brown. The base salary is pretty darn low in his contract. The Patriots, I mean, they did beat the Bills in Week 7, but I think that they're probably going to be sellers at the trade deadline. Trent Brown, still a really good offensive tackle. He's probably going to be one of the more hot commodities as we approach the deadline this year. So next up on today's show, I'm going to go to the defensive side of the ball and go over some of the edge rushers. There's a lot of really good edge rushers that could be traded before the deadline. But before I get into that, if you want more from me, my name is Jack Sperry. I'm an NFL analyst here at Chat Sports. If you want more NFL content on Twitter, film analysis, stat analysis, all that great stuff, go check me out at Jack_Sperry on X right now. Now let's get to the edge rushers here, and there's quite a few of them. I had to just pick 5. Brian Burns of the Carolina Panthers is definitely one of the top options. Really, really good player. It's been a little bit lower on the production side this year, but there's definitely a lot of teams out there looking for another edge rusher to add that he could be extremely valuable to. Another guy, Danielle Hunter from the Minnesota Vikings, just ripped. Absolutely one of the strongest edge rushers in the National Football League today. Can play outside linebacker / defensive end. He's got the size and the athleticism to do both. A very versatile piece. A team like the Jacksonville Jaguars, I think, could absolutely be in the running to get Danielle Hunter. Montez Sweat and Chase Young from the Washington Commanders are going to be on the chopping block. It looks like one of these guys could get traded. They've already paid Jonathan Allen. They've already paid Daron Payne. They're probably going to give an extension to one of these guys. Then the other guy, they're either going to franchise tag or they're going to trade away before the trade deadline. I'm not really sure because both of them are really playing well. I don't know what they're going to do, but one of those guys might get traded before the deadline. Then Carl Lawson, another guy kind of forgotten, has dealt with a lot of injuries, and he's kind of been put down the Jets depth chart with guys like Jermaine Johnson and Will McDonald kind of moving up the depth chart there in New York. Carl Lawson, a guy that's a former starter, could absolutely be on the chopping block here and get traded elsewhere before the deadline. And then on defensive tackle, definitely less defensive tackles, interior defenders potentially getting traded. Leonard Williams is probably at the top of the list. New York Giants can play 5 technique, 3 technique. Really good player, really good pass rusher. If a team is looking for interior pass rush, Leonard Williams is probably going to be their guy. So now I've got a couple more positions left to go here, but real quick, go ahead and give us a like on today's show. Click that thumbs up icon. If you're feeling generous here, we really do appreciate everybody that clicks that thumbs up icon. Now let's move to linebackers here, where we got Josey Jewell, inside linebacker from the Broncos. I mean, there's just a ton of Broncos players on here because they're going to be sellers, right? So Josey Jewell, probably worth a 5th-round pick at this point, in my opinion, kind of a good starter at a lower end position, inside linebacker. It'll definitely be interesting to see if Josey ends up getting traded here. And then Patrick Queen is another guy that I think could be a surprise trade candidate here. Of course, the Ravens are playing good football right now, but they're paying Roquan Smith top of the market right now. Queen's going to be a free agent next year. If they get a good deal for Patrick Queen, maybe like a 3rd-round pick or something like that, 4th-round pick even, they might accept that, and Patrick Queen could be going elsewhere. Then the 2 big names at the cornerback market, lots of teams in need of cornerback help. Patrick Surtain is the name that gets thrown around all the time, but here's the thing. I think it's going to be really, really difficult for the Broncos to part ways with Patrick Surtain. He's a young superstar in this league on his rookie contract. They're going to want at least 2 first-rounders and probably another starter, the current starter in that deal, which is an extremely high price for a corner. I know how good Patrick Surtain is, but the Broncos are on their way towards a rebuild, and Patrick Surtain is probably going to be a building block for the future there in Denver. I think the more likely trade option is Jalen Johnson from the Bears, really grading out well right now in the 2023 season. He could be a real contributor for a title contender if they still need cornerback help at this point. Then the final position here, we go to safety. Justin Simmons from the Broncos, one of the best free safeties in the National Football League, in my opinion. He's available. He's currently being rumored to the Philadelphia Eagles, who are in need of safety help. Wouldn't surprise me whatsoever if Howie Roseman ends up making a deal with Denver there. Then we got Jeremy Chinn, very versatile chess piece. He can play linebacker. He can play strong safety. Very, very good player, in my opinion. And I think that there's actually a pretty decent chance he will get dealt before the deadline. Then something that might be a little bit less likely, but I wanted to throw on here, Harrison Smith from the Minnesota Vikings. He's getting older, but he's playing really, really well. I'm not sure if Brian Flores is really down to move on from Harry because he's doing such a great job so far this season. But overall, he is getting older, and the Vikings are looking like they could be on their way towards a mini rebuild here. Harrison Smith could be something that they could get maybe a 4th or 5th round draft pick for, if that. So it's definitely an interesting situation there in Minnesota. We'll have to keep our eyes on that as this next week progresses. But that'll be it for today's show, guys. We do have one more question for you, though. Name someone that you want your favorite NFL team to trade for here before the trade deadline. Let me know what your favorite team is, and then let me know the player that you want your team to trade for down there in the comments. Thank you guys so much for all of your support. Make sure that you click that subscribe button for me right now for our wall-to-wall coverage, covering all the latest trade rumors and news surrounding the National Football League trade deadline. Of course, it's going to be on October 31st. We're going to be going live for that. So if you want to get all the updates, if you don't want to miss a single move around the NFL here over the next week, do me a favor. Click that subscribe button right now.